Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett. And do the San Francisco 49ers already know who they're taking in the first round of this year's NFL draft? Which prospects have they talked to at the NFL Combine? And which free agents have they been connected to early on this offseason? So much to get into today. The NFL Combine has come and gone, and there's so many rumors circulating out there we have to discuss. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave us that 5-star audio podcast review, and let's dive into what the NFL Combine gave us this year, because social media is talking about prospects and 40 times and which offensive lineman ran a 10-yard with the fastest. That's all great and all. All that goes into the drafting process. But what I care about are the rumors that come out about the impending free agents. Which team is trying to make the big splash trade, and which current player wants off his current team? There's so much to get into, and the NFL Combine brings us that because agents, coaches, players, all in the same room at the same time. And I think the biggest storyline we saw over the past couple days or so is about who the San Francisco 49ers are targeting with the 27th overall pick in this year's NFL draft, which I know a lot of you out there aren't too fond of what this team has done in the first round in previous drafts under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. There's been some good. Nick Bosa, when healthy, is a defensive player of the year candidate all the time. He's that good. He's a game changer. He's a playmaker. He's a game wrecker. And there has been some better ones, fingers crossed, recently, but those two remain to be seen, that being Ricky Pearsall and Mike Williams. But mixed in there is a whole bunch of crap, right? You got Solomon Thomas, Reuben Foster, two busts for very different reasons. Mike McGlinchey was okay, but wasn't elite at right tackle. Got paid, though, by the Broncos, I will say. Then you have Brandon Ayuk, who looked like a hit, and by all intents and purposes was a hit on his first contract. Then he lost his freaking mind. Javon Hargrave, most known for threatening reporters on the team, not known for his play with the team. Then, of course, there is Trey Lance and a slog of wasted first-round draft picks traded along with him to the Miami Dolphins. It was a disaster. This team's first-round pick history is not just inconsistent. It is among the worst in the current GM roles that have been together, or the head coach and GM tandems that have been tenured for about 5 to 6 years or so. Kyle and John have not been great at taking or picking players in the first round. That said, this is a big one because this will be your third first-round draft pick in a row. The last two guys have been a little more miss than hit, mainly due to injuries. God, Pearsall, Michael, please stay healthy. But this is a big one because you won 12 games last year. And this team is desperate for an interior pass rusher, for more edge rushing help, for a cornerback, for a multitude of wide receivers implemented on this roster. They need some help. And this is a stacked receiver class. This is a stacked edge rushing class. And they're out there talking. They're trying to have these conversations. But according to one source, it seems like they've narrowed down their decision, or at least targeting one player in particular. And according to Essentially Sports, Tony Pauline, he says the San Francisco 49ers are among teams targeting Louisville wide receiver Chris Bell in the late first round. When I heard that, I said that is the most 49ers prospect amongst the wide receivers in this class, because we've already heard the reports of the Niners may want to bring back Deebo Samuel. There was George Kittle or Christian McCaffrey or even John Lynch. There have been a breadcrumb of trails leading to what could be a reunion of sorts between Deebo and San Francisco. Then there's Chris Bell. who is a 22-year-old, 6'2", 220-pound, thick boy out of Louisville that eats underneath, that runs digs and slants and screens, and once he gets the ball in his hands, is a mess to deal with for a defense. Who does that sound like to you? A limited route tree, but it's big, it's powerful, it's strong, it likes to get yak, it likes to bulldoze defenders over. It kind of sounds like Deebo Samuel. And I don't think there's anything wrong with a player like Chris Bell being linked to the San Francisco 49ers. They need a player like this. Now, I'd prefer Chris Bell over Deebo Samuel. However, I wouldn't prefer Chris Bell at 27 overall, and I'll tell you why. One, while Chris Bell can play X, he's a playmaker. He's something this team needs offensively. Like I already said, limited route tree. I wish he was a little more aggressive at the catch point. And I wish he would hand fight a little more against more physical cornerbacks and defensive backs that can give him fits at times. And while he is a projectable player, his skill set screams, go to Shanahan, go to McVay, go to O'Connell. These guys can make it work for you in the passing game, right? Go to Kubiak. Now at the Raiders, it all makes sense. The big knock on him is, well, you're coming off a torn ACL. And there were reports that Chris Bell might miss some time in the preseason, may miss week 1 with the ACL injury. According to Pauline, he's ahead of schedule and will be ready by training camp. So fingers crossed, good sign there for Chris Bell. However, knowing how desperate San Francisco is at wide receiver, how they really need this year's first-round draft pick to hit, right? They really need it. And if you're going to use it on a receiver in a really deep receiver class, which I don't think is a bad thing inherently, you got to make sure. You don't want to be the one team, like the last thing you want to be, and they made up for it in a big way getting A.J. Brown, but you don't want to see CeeDee Lamb, albeit Jerry Jeudy's bad and Henry Ruggs is in prison, CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Ayuk and Justin Jefferson, and you pick Jalen Reagor. Or for the Raiders' case, you pick Henry Ruggs, but at least Reagor played football, which was bad at it, right? You don't want to be Jalen Reagor. You don't want to be that team that picks the wrong guy, and you're just like, how did we mess that up, right? You go back and watch the highlights of that draft, and you get behind the scenes of the Vikings smiling and laughing, going, "Oh my God, how did Philadelphia not take Justin Jefferson?" Now, I'm not saying Chris Bell is Justin Jefferson. He's not by a wide margin. That said, in a stacked wide receiver class that'll have guys like Mekhi Lemon go in the top 10, Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson top 15, maybe Omar Cooper goes top 15. That's a possibility. Those are already 4 guys right there. You got Tate, Lemon, Cooper, Tyson. Then you get your Denzel Bostons, who's a true X wide receiver who I'd love in San Francisco, if that's possible. Then you have your KJ Concepcions. That's 6 guys, and they're all kind of different, but that's 6 guys ahead of Chris Bell on my draft board. But other people may have Chris Brazzell out of Tennessee on their draft board, who I think his traits offer a little bit more, although there is more bust potential in Chris Brazzell. Zachariah Branch, who is really tiny, but God, he can move and he's tough to bring down. The last thing you can do if you're San Francisco is watch what seems to be a bunch of dudes that would fit your offense perfectly. They'd all plug and play in a variety of roles, and you pick the limited underneath guy in round 1. Going back to Deebo Samuel turned out to be an all-pro player, turned out to be a phenomenal San Francisco 49er, maybe outside of his 3-year contract with him he signed after a somewhat of a lengthy holdout after his rookie contract. He was a good rookie contract player for San Francisco. But where was he picked? Now, maybe in a redraft, you'd say Deebo goes round 1, but there's a reason Deebo went round 2, because the route tree was limited, very specific skill set. And now it takes a great coach like Kyle to say, I can unlock that. And I think Kyle could unlock the greatness or the good things in Chris Bell, but is that the guy you pick in round one? I don't know. That is my only concern, is that I think it'd be a reach. Bell is a second, third round prospect, probably more of a early day two pick, so round two pick. But there is a world where, like 2024, receivers are flying off the draft board, and San Francisco is like, look, if we don't take a receiver now, we ain't getting our guy, which became Ricky Pearsall, at our next pick. And so what did they do? They picked him, and they watched a bunch of receivers go off the draft board. And you can debate, was he the right guy, the wrong guy? He's got to be healthy. We know the story now, right? But that was their dude. And if Chris Bell is their guy and he's their dude, and they're like, we ain't making it to 50, we're going to take him now. That is a concern of mine, that they start seeing receivers fly off the board. They're like, oh my God, we got to act now before our guy is gone. You could very easily see an overreach by John and Kyle. And that to me is a concern. Now, do I think Chris Bell is a bad player? No. I think the Niners should be in on Chris Bell. He screams Niners. He really does. And I think it's important to consider the source too. Tony Pauline has a long history of being right and also a long history of being wrong. In particular, with the San Francisco 49ers, you go back to when Deebo Samuel, funny enough, wanted a brand new contract. He's the guy that reported that the Jets have the Godfather offer on the table. And that quote-unquote Godfather offer ended up being like a fourth-round pick and the next year's like fifth-round pick. It was like nothing. And it was like, really? I've seen The Godfather, and that's not what I thought it was. That's not a Godfather-type deal. So he was wrong in that case. But then you fast forward a couple years, and funny enough, again, a Louisville player, in this case, Isaac Guerendo, he was like, San Francisco loves him. They're enamored by him. He will be a San Francisco 49er. Last time I checked, albeit he doesn't play much, Isaac Guerendo is a San Francisco 49er. So there is some give and take with Pauline's reporting. I would tend to take this with not a boulder of salt. I would put it in your back pocket and say, you know what? Chris Bell does sound like a 49er. He fits their need at receiver. He fits what they could attempt to do instead of finding a running back number two because they believe in Jordan James or Isaac Guerendo. And maybe he's a player they believe can open up things underneath while having Pearsall healthy, banking on him finally playing, 16 plus games, 17 plus games in a season to be their quasi deep threat and signing a free agent. Like, a lot of this has to come into the picture first and kind of come into play before we get into 27 overall. And I'll just be blunt. There is no way in hell an NFL team at the scouting combine is telling people we already know who we're taking unless you are the Las Vegas Raiders and the New York Jets. And I can argue even the Jets may not know because they are a mess in the front office. The only team that knows knows the player they're taking is the Raiders. Fernando Mendoza, pick number 1. You cannot tell me the San Francisco 49ers are like, yep, got our guy. If he's there, he's ours. When you're picking 27, every team does this. Sean Payton talked about this a couple years ago and did it again recently. Each team has about 3 to 5 players they believe will be there that they like at their pick in the first round. He was talking about Mahomes, right? They loved Marshawn Lattimore. They liked Patrick Mahomes. They're waiting on the draft board, waiting. And they say, whichever one of those guys is there is ours. Chiefs trade up. Lattimore falls to them. They get Lattimore. The rest is history. I can't believe the Bills made that trade. It ruined them as a franchise, or at least big roadblock in their path to a Super Bowl, as is San Francisco's. But I digress. The Niners may have Chris Bell on their board at pick 27, but he could be the last guy. He could be the 5th prospect, right? They can have 4 other guys of like, we like these guys better. They're awesome. But I can also tell you, they've had in-season scouting. They've had combine interviews. They've had the film to go over, and you've had Senior Bowl and Triangle Bowl stuff. A lot of teams don't even get and dwindle their draft board until like a couple of days prior to the draft, because new information comes out and new things change. So, yes, I think Chris Bell will be on San Francisco's draft board at some point. 27 overall, in the 50s, who knows? He's going to be on there. He fits what they want and need almost to a T as a wide receiver, as an underneath guy to help spell Christian McCaffrey and be there, Deebo Samuel light, to just put things in a rather simplified way. But the Niners or anybody in that room telling a reporter, hey, 27, got our guy. Like, no. So I think Pauline is right and wrong. They'll target him, but he ain't the only guy they're going to target. So we'll see what happens on draft night, but a long way to go. But Chris Bell does and sounds like a San Francisco 49er. If the medicals check out, I'm just letting you know, watch out. If receivers are gone, Kyle and John will get aggressive. And if he's there, we'll see what happens again. But it wouldn't surprise me, although I wouldn't advise making that selection. But let's move forward here to our next thing. And it's 3 draft prospects San Francisco has met with at the Combine. Funny enough, I did not see a report that said Chris Bell met with San Francisco. Maybe he did and I missed it. But these are 3 known players San Francisco has met with at the Combine. I'm sure there's 100 more there. They take these things extremely serious. And I did find them a little interesting who they talked to, because it wasn't who I expected them. But again, they could have talked to those guys and we don't know about it yet. So time will tell how the draft process works out. But they talked to Ole Miss defensive tackle Zxavian Harris. I'm not going to get into much to him. Admittedly, I had not gone into the defensive tackle class too much just yet, but I can get into the 2 other guys they talked to. The first one being Clemson wide receiver Antione Williams. This one was intriguing simply because there's a lot of like Niner Shanahan things. You go, that makes sense. But then it's what it would mean for Ricky Pearsall and what the receiver brings to the table and his role he'd play in the offense wasn't what I was expecting. And so Williams, 5'11", 190 pounds. He plays bigger than that, maybe close to 195, 200. And I mean, he plays up to his size or higher than his size, but he is 190 pounds, 30 and 3/4 inch arms. So, some nice arm length to him. His nice kind of slender-ish build. He's 21 years old. He can play that slot kind of Z receiver role, but I think he's more of a slot-only type player. He played 30% of his snaps in the slot last year with Clemson, and like Ricky Pearsall, like Brandon Ayuk, like a lot of the guys Shanahan likes, them routes are crisp. We're talking kettle-cooked lays, kettle-cooked chips. Them puppies are crisp. He tempo his routes, finds the soft spots and zone coverage. And he is somebody that can accelerate and take the top off the defense. A lot of things San Francisco needs, right? However, the speed is inconsistent when it's downfield speed. And the hands are reliable. He can make catches away from his frame, but sometimes he'll use his chest, thus leading to drops at times. His smaller frame will hold him back as a run blocker, but he certainly tries. And he is an experienced returner with 39 punt returns, so you do get some versatility. Last year at Clemson, 55 receptions, 604 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That doesn't scream awesome to you. Go back 2 years ago in 2024, 75 receptions, 904 yards, and 11 touchdowns. So there is a level of production that you go, okay, I can see what they like about this guy. However, he's a day 2 player. So you're talking round 2, round 3. But he probably projects to be a slot-only player, thus meaning, does Pearsall become your X? I wouldn't love that. He's too unreliable health-wise, and he's not the biggest guy in the world. Does he become your Z receiver? I don't know. Like, the Niners need to find some reliability, and I think Williams can bring that. However, while you like the skill set, the route running, and the effort when it comes to blocking, he's had a lot of nagging injuries the last couple of seasons. So it makes sense. He's a type of player they like, type of receiver they like. He can get open. He can beat zone coverage a lot. And he has the speed to, at times, take the top off the defense. But a lot of nagging injuries, sometimes a chest catcher. And he would have he had to be moved around a lot, but he'd be more in the slot more than anything. Unless they love the idea of having a guy that's 6'1" and 5'11" running around and sitting in soft zones. I don't know, but not the player I would love them to take, but somebody I could really see say, that's a 49ers wide receiver if I've ever seen one, right? You have your Chris Bells, your Deebo type guys, and you have your Williams and your Pearsall type guys where it's like, hey, yeah, they run routes really well. Wow. Shanahan's like, that's my guy. So I can see that too, but a lot to like, but there are some things that are drawbacks, which is any prospect. But in the Niners case, they met with him. So you have to give the good and the bad. The most intriguing prospect to me, though, was Miami edge rusher Akeem Mesidor, who San Francisco met with over the weekend. He's 6'2", 265 pounds. The biggest knock on him from fans and maybe draft pundits and some scouts have been he's 25 years old. He'll be 25 years old in his rookie season. He's an older prospect. And so if the age thing bothers you and you think, okay, he'll be 30 when his contract's up, and that doesn't really scream longevity in the NFL. You want to find guys that are around 22, 23, not 25. However, when you look for instant impact production, the last two seasons, a 91.2 overall grade, a 91.2 pass rushing grade, a 92.9 pass rushing grade on true pass sets, a 17.8% pass rush win rate, 87.1 run defense grade. Sorry, a lot of words out there now. 5% run stop rate, and a 15.5 miss tackle rate. The big thing about him is this dude is refined as hell, as he should be. You're 25. You are a finished product, really, coming into the NFL. You better be at the top of your game. Mesidor has moves galore. Like, he's got the moves. Incredible two-handed swipe as a pass rusher. He has the club move, the swim move, the cross chop, the bull rush. This dude is the most refined pass rusher in the class. You talk about David Bailey, Arvell Reese, Ruben Bain. Mesidor was the other guy opposite Bain eating up quarterbacks. And Bain's getting, top 2, top 5, top 3 consideration, rightfully so. Mesidor is like, I was equally as productive. My biggest knock is I'm 25. I'm not 22. I'm not 23. So interesting to see how far he falls, or if somebody maybe early on that is ready to contend in their eyes takes him, because you talk about day one hits or guys that you believe can compete and be like instant impact players. Mesidor should be, and quite frankly, has to be. And for a player of size that, is 6'2", 265, a little shorter than you'd like. You want guys around, 6'4", 270, but the weight isn't the worst thing, but it is lighter than most edge rushers at the NFL level. And he can get moved around a little bit. He can get kind of tossed around, but, and there are questions of how much better can you get, but this guy translates. His tape is like NFL, boom, you're there. And so for San Francisco, if he falls to 27 and the interview went well, it's going to be hard for a defensive coordinator like Raheem Morris to be pounding the table like, please, please, let's take him, because it's rare you find people like him. Like, take last year, Abdul Carter, right? People talk generational prospect, amazing, Micah Parsons 2.0, all this, that, and the other. Um, and he had a really good rookie season, although there was some character concerns, I guess, mixed in there. But there was clear of like, he's good now, but wait till he gets 3 years in, watch out. That's not the conversation with Mesidor. Or take James Pierce Jr., who character concerns out the wazoo, as we saw what happened recently, which sucks for him and sucks for people involved opposite him. Like, be better, brother. It's not hard to be a good person. That said, he had a phenomenal year as a pass rusher out there in Atlanta, funny enough. And he fell because of character concerns. If Mesidor falls because of age concerns and potential concerns, but he can be a good player for you for 5 years, and you're like, yeah, you're worth every penny as a first-round draft pick, I could see San Francisco doing that too. So he's somebody that is more likely to be a better 3-down player than a Bryce Huff would be. He's going to give you some more strength, has a high motor. Again, an 87.1 run defense grade, a 5% stop rate. Like, there is signs of this dude is a great pass rusher and a great run defender. And even if that dips down somewhat, let's say it goes from 87 to 76, that is very much playable. Even if his run stop rate goes from 5 to 3%, it's playable. Now, at 25, you can maybe change your body, getting with Prisco Sarek, and that, like, hopefully things can work out. And I just don't know how much you can get better. But if you're the 49ers, like, we won 12 games last year. We don't need you to become a superstar if you can, or, we don't need you to have an insane ceiling if your current ceiling is already amazing, right? Why take a 22-year-old Chris Bell off a torn ACL that you believe can become Deebo Samuel 2.0 when you can get Mesidor and be like, he's great now? There is no what he could become. It's what he is. So that is kind of the conundrum teams are going to have. And I think San Francisco is smart. They're covering their bases here. If this guy falls, it's going to be really hard to say no, because he's got it all. He's just a little older, and that can scare some teams away that maybe aren't ready to contend just yet, whereas San Francisco's like, hey, we're ready. And they can use another number 2 edge rusher opposite Nick Bosa. And hopefully pair him with Mike Hill and even Bryce Huff. If Huff's your 3 or 4, watch out. Penny fronts with Raheem Morris, man, you can have some fun NASCAR packages. Man, that'd be fun. So we'll see what happens. I think the Niners I think San Francisco at this point in time, being March 1st at 10:07 p.m., I think defensive tackle, a 3-tech pass rusher, edge, and receiver are the likely 3 positions they will take in round 1. That is dependent on prospects, but I think those are the 3 positions I'm thinking. And on tackle, not going to take a guard, not going safety. I think receiver, interior pass rusher, and edge are the 3 positions they're like, these are ours if they're there if our guy is on the board. That said, this is a great time to remind you that, yeah, it's winter time, but spring is around the corner. Spring training for baseball is happening. It's in full swing. The Giants are playing really well, snapped a meaningless Dodgers winning streak in spring training. NBA still happening. The Warriors are terrible, but there's other teams out there too. You can go see Golden State and Company live in person. Concerts are still happening every single weekend. My brother went and saw a couple of bands in Hollywood today, actually. So I guess yesterday when the show comes out. And you want to know how he did it? He used our promo code 49ers Access. 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. I like free money. I like discounts. I'm on the Maverick gift card thing. I got the Upside app. I am Googling promo codes whenever I buy something because saving money is so important to me and my family. When you can find a good deal, you take a good deal, and saving $20 off your purchase for concert tickets, for games, for whatever else you want to do at SeatGeek.com to me is a darn good deal. So save yourself $20 off your first purchase by using our promo code 49ers Access, 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com. Okay. We've talked draft prospects. We've talked who San Francisco may or may not take at pick 27 this year, but we haven't talked about free agency just yet. And this one isn't necessarily a rumor at the combine, but it is something that fans have talked about. It is something that you've heard a lot of people mention as maybe a band-aid to a much bigger problem, and that is signing Mike Evans to be San Francisco's ex-wide receiver. Let's say Denzel Boston's not there round one. Let's say Omar Cooper's not there round one. God, I hope he is. Let's say Malachi Fields isn't there in round 3 or 4. And San Francisco's like, oh, crap. You can essentially prevent disaster striking and preemptively finding your ex-wide receiver. Maybe you want to sign Deebo Samuel. I wouldn't do that, but if they do, okay. Maybe you want to sign Mike Evans. He fills a bigger hole for you. Maybe it gives you versatility to say, hey, we can get Williams from Clemson. We can go out there and get Chris Bell from Louisville. We can go find the ancillary piece, the Z wide receiver, the slot wide receiver in our offense because we have Mike Evans. And although I would be a little hesitant to pay a near 35-year-old receiver who had a lot of injuries last year and missed almost the entire season some money, he did lay out the 4 criteria of a team he's looking for this offseason. The first one, a quarterback he believes in. Now, that is subjective, but I like to think he believes in Brock Purdy. So the Niners, in the first case, could be a fit. Let's go to the next one, though. Has a chance at a Super Bowl. Once again, a little less subjective, but still kind of in that category because, you know, Philadelphia is a good team, but is Philadelphia really in their window right now at the way things ended last year? Probably not. And they don't have a need, but still. The Bills could fit in that category. The Bengals, albeit they have a lot of receivers getting a lot of money, could fit the category. The Ravens can make some sense for Mike Evans. But also San Francisco can make some sense as much as the Ravens could and the Seahawks could. If they have a chance, which San Francisco has a much better chance than 85% of the league and about 85% of the NFC conference, okay, they can certainly fit that second criteria for Mike Evans. The next one, they are almost a favorite in this category. It is a top shelf offensive coordinator. Kyle Shanahan may not be the best head coach in football, but he is maybe the best offensive coordinator when you give him the weapons that he needs, right? Go back to 2 years ago when it was, Ayuk and Deebo and Kittle and McCaffrey and Purdy. It was like, you ain't stopping this team, albeit the Super Bowl happened. So somebody stopped him. They stopped themselves. I'll put that out there, but I digress. Not important. A conversation for a different time. Shanahan belongs in the McVay, maybe the Kubiak, albeit I wouldn't put him up there just yet. But Shanahan, McVay, like he's top 2, top 3 of the offensive-minded head coaches OCs in football. So far, San Francisco does match 3 of the 4 criterias that Mike Evans is looking for in his next team. The last one, though, is a little less convincing because I don't know if San Francisco can promise this. The 4th and final criteria that teams have to meet to sign or have a chance to sign Chris Evans, or Yeah, Chris Evans, Captain America, my goodness. Mike Evans, not Chris Evans, not Captain America. The wide receiver, Mike Evans, is a promise of a high volume of touches. And this can go two ways. If San Francisco, let's say, doesn't sign Deebo Samuel, and if George Kittle misses some time, or really is even healthy, but still, let's say Kittle misses some time, I think he will, and you draft the receiver in round 1 or 2, and you have Pearsall, and you have Demarcus Robinson, and Kendrick Bourne, and Jordan Watkins, and Jacob Cowing, and you plug in Mike Evans, yeah, kind of a guarantee, especially if Purdy's playing quarterback, which by all intents and purposes he will be. He will give Mike Evans a chance to catch anything and everything. Purdy wants to push the ball deep downfield. If Evans can be somewhat of an X-field stretcher, by all means, Purdy's saying, bring it to me. However, if they, let's say, sign Deebo Samuel, and their plan is to draft the receiver in the first round, and at Pearsall, and if all the other guys we already said, doesn't seem like Deebo and Mike Evans can coexist. Deebo is not Chris Godwin. Deebo is somebody who, if he's not getting the football, he's like, wait a minute, I'm going on social media. And for a first-round receiver, you would believe Shanahan would play that guy because only first and second-round receivers that are drafted play on this team. It's going to be hard for Mike Evans to be a top, target getter on this roster. You can make the argument that Ayuk was the top target even when they had Deebo and they had Kittle. So, okay, I'll give you that for sure. I mean, heck, I just thought of it myself, so I'll give myself that too. I just don't know, what does a high volume mean? Is it 80 targets? Is it 90 targets? Is it 100 targets? You're not getting 100 targets on this team. You're not even getting 90 targets on this team. Most people get 85. That's the most. And they catch 75 balls. If you're IU, you can get open like that. Okay, you can get a little higher, but Mike Evans is not a route running specialist that can eat up, a defense like Ayuk could, like Pearsall can when he's healthy. He is a X-wide receiver that wants to get deep and wants a handful of opportunities to do that. Now, again, Purdy being there makes that it makes the fourth criteria fit San Francisco. Sure. I just don't know if that's in the cards. And again, I don't like paying guys that are near 35 years old and that want the ball. Like, people will say, well, it's like Randy Moss in 2011. Okay, Randy Moss was like 34 years old, same as Evans around that time, but knew he was at the end of his career. He wasn't begging for the football. You go 2 weeks and Mike Evans has 3 targets, and let's say San Francisco wins both those games, 20-14, 23-17, who knows? You don't want guys you don't want a leader or a veteran player around younger dudes complaining, begging, bitching for the football. You're like, we just won a football game. Like the Niners this year could not exist if they had a player begging for the football. And that doesn't mean they wouldn't be better if Mike Evans or Deebo Samuel were on the roster. It just means that this team had to use everybody to get there. They were on their 6th linebacker. They were on their 3rd left guard. They were on backup quarterbacks and their starting quarterback and their 6th and 7th wide receiver. Like, they were on the bottom of the barrel scraping to find production. The one thing you don't want, because it's exactly what Deebo did in 2024 of like, hey, lost season, I'm not getting the ball. And it's like, you are getting the ball. And then it causes a problem. So I like Mike Evans. I think he's savvy enough to have those conversations behind the scenes rather than go on social media. So if he's part of the plan, okay, I can swallow that as long as we talk about number 2 wide receiver, and no Deebo Samuel. Deebo and Evans cannot coexist. There wouldn't be enough ball. No way. No way. But, we'll see. We'll see. I am interested to see what Evans wants because San Francisco fits all those criteria. Quarterback he believes in, Purdy's one of the better ones. Kansas City Super Bowl, San Francisco won 12 games last year, and if they were healthy, who knows what happens. Shanahan's a top shelf OC, and if they don't get Deebo Samuel, and they're not signing a bunch of receivers in free agency, there could be a high volume of touches readily available. So I would do it. I would sign Mike Evans like a 1-year deal with some incentives. However, if you do that, you got to make sure you protect yourself because he had a lot of injuries last year and could never get healthy. That scares me. Moving along, though, to some actual reporting from a viable source. No shade to Pauline. Just this is more real. That is ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. And he dropped a ton of nuggets this morning about the combine, what he heard, what he didn't hear, what teams plan to do this offseason. And he mentioned in the San Francisco 49ers category that, and I quote here, the Niners are sneaky contenders for free agents along the defensive line and at wide receiver. Now, he dove more into this, which is why I believe if they don't get one in free agency, then this position becomes a higher priority in the first round for San Francisco. It's why I think it's among their 3 positions they have circled for them at pick 27. We already mentioned receiver and edge rusher. Fowler says they want a disruptive interior rusher to pair with Nick Bosa, and he went as far as to bless us with a name. Now, he didn't say they have targeted him or they plan to target him. I think he's saying this player makes sense for the San Francisco 49ers, that he can see them being in the running for him this offseason, and I agree. In fact, I have mentioned this player on the Krug Show with Larry Krueger. We're all getting a pig in a pickle, and that is John Franklin Myers of the Denver Broncos, who's an impending free agent in like a week and a half's time. Franklin Myers is, according to Spotrac, to get $7.4 million AAV. That is per year. I think it'll be much higher than that. However, he is going to be, I think, 30 years old this year. But when you dive into his numbers, although I'm going to bring up PFF in a second, and some of you out there may be like, Sterling, PFF, really? It's a baseline. Just bear with me. His stats were some of the best in the NFL last year amongst interior pass rushers. As you can see on your screen here in front of you, we have Jeffrey Simmons, Zach Allen, Byron Murphy, Brandon Dorless, Kobe Turner, number 5, tied with Malik Collins, Leonard Williams, and Gervon Dexter Jr. You have John Franklin Myers. And the reason he's amongst that group in 5th is, according to PFF, he had the tied for 5th most sacks amongst interior pass rushers with 8. He had a pass rush win rate of 12.7%. The average is a little below 10 for an interior pass rusher, or starting caliber, good caliber is around 10%. He was 3% above that this past season for Denver. He had 39 pressures, 8 quarterback hits, hence the 8 quarterback sacks, 23 hurries, and had a 68.9 pass rushing grade, which, okay, it's not phenomenal, but he's a guy that you can really buy into, a guy that you can see San Francisco coveting. Now, again, he'll probably get around $9, maybe $10 million a year, but his age could become a factor, and maybe there isn't a market for him. I think there will be, but you never know. I love this. I think it wouldn't cost you too much. Again, $10 million is not that much money on the high end for a player like John Franklin Myers. The production's there, veteran guy, plug him into your defensive line, and for a base, imagine Bosa, John Franklin Myers, Alfred Collins, Michael Williams. Then, depending on what you do in round 1 or round 2, whether it's you keep Bryce Huff and then you have CJ West and then you have Keon White and you draft Zion Young from Missouri, you get Akeem Mesidor from Miami. Then you start plugging and playing. Samuel Kawanu comes back. Like, you can start to see the picture kind of come to fruition in front of you. And that is a ferocious, lengthy, big, mammoth-sized front that you're like, yeah, good luck. I'm not saying it's Seattle because that's a unique thing, but that is like the one thing San Francisco lacked last year amongst many of them was the ability to get to the quarterback from the interior. Why is Seattle so good? They got Williams and Murphy who are eating up guys on the interior. Williams had 8 sacks, I believe, and Murphy had 9. They had 17 sacks from their defensive tackles last year, essentially. San Francisco probably had 2, maybe 3. It wasn't very good, right? So you want to get away from Clea Davis and Jordan Elliott and whatever else is behind that. You plug in John Franklin Myers and you have a starting caliber 3 tech next to Collins and Bosa and Michael and mixed with Huff and whoever else they bring in this offseason. I love that. And I think they are going to be in on John Franklin Myers because they have to be. You cannot walk into next year with as bad of a room as you had, not just on the edge, but on the interior. And I can make the case that interior pass rush might be a bigger need for this team than the edge. Like, yeah, Bosa, when he's healthy, Huff and Michael and Samuel Kawanu and Keon White. 5 guys you'd love to add a higher potential, higher ceiling 6th guy to that room that can kind of become your edge 2, your edge 3 amongst that grouping. But you kind of got a group you like. It isn't perfect, but if Bosa's healthy and Michael's healthy, that group looks a lot better than what it did last year towards the end. What doesn't look better is the interior group. That was far worse once you get behind Alfred Collins. It's a bunch of veteran guys that haven't done jack squat, diddly poo defensively. Shout out John Mara. So I love the idea of adding John Franklin Myers to this room, to this defense. The production is there. He's a proven guy. He wouldn't cost you too much, maybe a 2-year deal. I'd be reluctant to go 3 because of the age, but if you can get it for 2, like 2 for 14, 2 for 20, 2 for 22, that's good, man. You wouldn't be tied for him too long. It'd be in your window. I would love that. But that's not all Jeremy Fowler had to say and report on it, because he added that the Niners are sneaky contenders for a wide receiver. It wasn't just defensive line. It was wide receiver. I'm not sure how sneaky you can be for a position where you don't have anybody. Maybe that meant more for the defense than wide receiver, but the Niners should not be sneaking up on anybody with the need for wide receiver. They need wide receivers. And the first one that Fowler mentioned, and again, didn't say that they were going for these guys, but just mentioned them in passing of like, these guys can make sense. And one of these names I love. I've said it a lot of times on the show. The other one, though, I don't love. And it's been mentioned a handful of times on the show. And I've been like, really? You want that guy? Okay. Why? Explain to me. Because the production's there, sure, but the injury history is really long and it's really scary. And I'm sure you're thinking, oh, we know who you're talking about, Sterling. That's right. It's Green Bay Packers free agent Romeo Doubs, who, when healthy, fits the offense. There are some drop issues at times, but he can make up for it in a big way. He's a bigger dude that can go up and get it. He can play X. He has a good catch radius. Knows the offense. Was in Green Bay the last couple of years. And has been pretty consistent despite the injury concerns. Since about 2023, you go back the last 3 years, 2023, 59 receptions, 674 yards, 8 touchdowns. Big year, right? The next year, 46 receptions, injury, concussions came into play, 601 yards, 4 touchdowns. This past year, pretty healthy for a lot of the season, 55 receptions, 724 yards, and 6 touchdowns. There is, despite the concerns, a level of consistency. Now, he would be kind of a B, kind of a C plus level signing, in my opinion, because there isn't much more upside. Like, he is who he is, which is a fine player. He's a good NFL player. I do have lingering concerns of the concussion stuff. I don't know if a substation can affect your brain and concussions, but it hasn't seemed to be a problem so far. Niners don't get many of those. If it was a hamstring thing, then I'd be worried, but he is somebody who's had some scary plays. And you take him from Green Bay and plug him in San Francisco, who's had terrible injury luck in recent seasons. I just get worried. Like I mentioned, not wanting to draft Chris Bell round 1 because of the ACL tear. That same kind of thought process applies to a player like Romeo Doubs of like, wow, you got it, but the head thing scares me. The head's tricky in itself. We haven't really mastered how to deal with it. Sometimes guys are still concussed playing. You can circumnavigate that. I know he wears the helmet. I'm forgetting its name right now, but like he has taken the strides to protect himself. Hence why he had a pretty good year last year doing so. But there is some scariness there that's going to be there, but he is a viable option to be a legitimate X wide receiver for your roster. And I think, honestly, I'd rather have Romeo Doubs than Mike Evans. There's a health problem, sure, but he's not 34, not in his 30s. And there has been, albeit less of, a high-end production, there's been a baseline consistent level for a guy that is not going to beg for the football. Like if you had Pearsall, Doubs in a draft pick, and then you have a veteran guy or somewhere in there, and you have Watkins and Cowling and Marcus Robinson's in there, Kendrick Bourne comes back, I don't know. Like, I don't hate that. Like that does have some good potential. I'm just really scared of the head thing. Like that does really scare me. However, the guy that Fowler mentioned last is maybe one of my favorite potential targets for the San Francisco 49ers in this free agent class. The way they've talked, John Lynch, Matt Barrows of The Athletic reporting on this of like, they may set out in some capacity free agency. Like they're going to be targeted was the words, targeted of who they're going to go out there and sign. So that means they're going to be particular. They're not going to go out there and spend a lot of money, but it may be 4 guys they like a lot and they want to bring in. And if they win, they get that guy. If they don't, then they're not signing anybody else, right? One guy I do think San Francisco should sign that does have a lot of potential left is Jalen Nailor. And funny enough, I've said it plenty of times here on the show, other shows out there, the Crew Show, the Cover 3 podcast, exclusively on YouTube on Fridays with myself, Dre Area Sports, and 49ers First Takes, Aaron Labigan. I mentioned, I want Jalen Nailor. You want a 4th wide receiver that has high end potential to become a 3 or 2. This is the guy. The Vikings are wanting to trade Jordan Addison to retain Jalen Nailor. Keep in mind, Addison was a 1st-round draft pick 3 years ago. They're done. They want to keep Jalen Nailor in the room, make him the receiver 2, receiver 3 next to Justin Jefferson. They like what he brings to the table, and so do I. I know people out there will say, Sterling, his highest and best production was last year when he caught 29 passes for 444 yards and 4 touchdowns. And you may say, that's gross. That's really bad. And I would say, He had J.J. McCarthy, who calls himself 9. He gave himself a nickname. Carson Wentz and Max Brosmer throwing him the football. They all sucked last year. They were the Clemson of the NFL. It was like everything that can go wrong is going wrong. The quarterback play was so bad. Like, yeah, it was gross. Do not look at last year as why they shouldn't sign Nailor. Go back to 2 years ago, 2024. Played in 17 games, started 7 of them on 42 targets. Not many. He wasn't crying for the football. He caught 28 passes. So that means he caught 1 less pass and 11 less targets 2 years ago compared to last year. Had 414 yards, and he had 6 touchdowns. You plug in that into San Francisco over Demarcus Robinson, over Kendrick Bourne, if that's your receiver 3, receiver 4 in a better offense with a better quarterback, a better running game, albeit not much because the Niners offensive line can't move guards or can't move defenders. It's just CMC going for 3 yards a pop every time. But nevertheless, that also has high potential because he's only 26. Like, he's a 26-year-old player that has yet to peak. Now, does he block is the question. 51.7 run blocking grade. It's not great. It's not great, but he tries. And I'd rather sign Jalen Nailor to, according to Spotrac, a $4.7 million deal for 2 years. So you give him, 2 for 10. Okay, $5 million for my receiver 3, my receiver 4. It's almost the exact same thing they did last year with Demarcus Robinson. And although that hasn't worked out yet, there's a reason he's not getting cut. He's cheap. And Nailor is younger and, quite frankly, better than him. And fits the offense, in my opinion. So I'd be all in on Nailor, even if you want Doubs, even if you want Deebo Samuel, even if you want Mike Evans or a receiver in round 1. Nailor is like the guy you're like, yeah, plug you in here. Even if he wants $7 million a year, $6 million a year, do it. There's high-end upside. He can become your slot receiver. He can grow into a receiver 2, maybe if you're lucky, play your Z. Like, there's reasons to bank on him on a 2-3 year deal compared to, Williams out of Clemson or Chris Braslot at Tennessee. Like, Nailor, to me, has a skill set and is more proven in a lesser capacity. But at the NFL level compared to other guys that you're like, I hope this works out. And he probably wouldn't be in the doghouse, which Shanahan loves adding new residents. So I would love Nailor. Doubs, okay, you can talk me into, but I can also talk myself out of it. Evans, I'm kind of like, yeah, you fit the criteria, but I don't know. I don't love that. But I am all in on Nailor. I know what it, I know he isn't the top dog, but it's like a nice floor raising player. If someone goes down, if Pearsall can't play, Nailor is going to give you something that nobody else could on the offense last year. So I'd be all in on that, even if you're in on other guys. John Franklin Myers, you want to draft somebody, get Nailor. There's no reason to not sign Jalen Nailor. He can be something for you. He can grow in your offense. And more importantly, raise your floor. This team, yes, needs ceiling raisers and superstars. Fine. They also have to raise their floor because the depth was terrible last year at wide receiver. You guys couldn't even get on the field and they weren't healthy. Nailor's been healthy. He's played 15 games 3 times in his career. And if you want to talk about history, he was cooking San Francisco's defense 2 years ago. And yeah, it was Nick Sorensen, so whatever. But still, he was cooking dudes. He was the reason they beat San Francisco 2 years ago. He was so good. My God, he was good. So I'd be all over Nailor. And look, free agency is around the corner. The combine's gone. We are going to ramp up the draft and free agent talk as the weeks go by because there's so much to cover. Stay tuned right here. enjoy your week. Enjoy your Monday. I'm sorry you have to go back to work. It sucks. I know, but if you guys can, like, share, and subscribe to the show. Don't forget to follow us on social media and use that promo code 49ers access at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off. And as always, my name is Sterling Bennett, and stay faithful.